Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the concluding session of our Horizon Europe Cluster 2 Info Day. This session focuses on cross-cutting issues and gives tips on novelties of this work program. For those who have just joined us, let me introduce myself. I am Minna Vilkki. I'm the head of Department of Future Society in REA, the European Research Executive Agency. We are the agency responsible for ensuring that the calls for proposals run smoothly and that we fund innovative projects of the highest quality. By now, I hope you have all watched the informative videos that we prepared beforehand on the call proposal process, on international cooperation, lump sum funding, and gender equality issues, these important cross-cutting issues. These videos are packed with practical tips and valuable insights which should help you in preparing proposals that will help you to secure funding. But now is the moment to ask any other questions you may have still after these videos, and we have colleagues here answering to these questions. If you haven't already submitted your questions via the Slido, do it now using hashtag CL2InfoDay. So, in the studio, we have Alison Imrie from DG Research and Innovation covering lump sum funding issues, Agnes Hegivarine and Cécile Ménétrez-Monchot from REA, my colleagues. They will answer questions related to the call process and provide you with additional tips on novelties of this work program. And online we have Kremena Mileva from DG Research and Innovation, who will cover the international cooperation related questions, and Hanna Tenglerova from DG Research and Innovation also, who will cover questions related to gender requirements, and finally Catherine Quesada, my colleague from REA, covering ethics related questions. So we'll do our best to answer all your questions now, here and now, but if we don't cover something, don't worry, we will gather your questions and we will answer to these later on in the FAQ that will be published in the Funding and Tenders portal or in the platform of this session. You can also always contact your national contact points or the Research Inquiry Service. But without any further ado, let's start. We have until 5 to 4 about with this session, and I start reading. So the first question is to Cécile. Given that lump sum, work program structure and grant design depend on interim reporting periods, what's the periodicity of 36 months and 42 months projects?
Well, the lump sum topics and lump sum projects are the same. They function the same way as actual cost projects. So there would not be any additional reporting periods. Typically for a project of 36 months or 42 months, we would be looking at a first reporting period of about 15 to 18 months, depending on the specificity of the project. Yeah, it would be the same as in actual costs. I think here you are maybe, this question was probably triggered by the fact that you might be concerned that lump sum projects are paid by work package. So once the work package is completed, this is when you receive the payment for it. And it has to coincide, of course, with a reporting period. So you would only receive the payment for that work package once we reach the end of the reporting period. This is something that you have to think about when you design your project. And you could also bear in mind to ensure that you have a stable cash flow throughout the project that allows you to implement the project as you would like to. There are some work packages, for instance, that would span the entire lifeline of the project. For instance, project management work package or communication, dissemination, exploitation work package. That could be split into two. So one ending at the end of the first reporting period, and then the second one coming in for the second reporting period. This would be one way of ensuring that you receive funds for these work packages and that you have a stable cash flow throughout the whole lifetime of the project.
Thanks. Can a consortium include multiple partners from one country, and is there a limit on the budget share allocated to partners from the same country? Who would take this? Agnes? Yeah.
So normally there's no limit on the number of participants from a given country. Obviously, you have to take care of the minimum requirements for a given type of action, meaning you need to have minimum 3 partners in a research and innovation or innovation actions, 3 partners one from member states at least, and 2 others can be from member states or associated countries. But besides that, you may have multiple partners, but obviously the role of the partners have to be justified always.
Okay. How important is it to refer to or build on previous or still running projects or involve partners from previous projects? Could you give examples?
Yes, it's very important to prove that you have the expertise in the field, whether it's related to previous EU projects or previous national projects or related to your publications. The experts will decide what will be relevant for a given topic. And it's very useful to build upon existing EU projects because there is a continuity of knowledge of topics if you look at the evolution of the work program. Could I give examples? I think if you look into the funded projects of previous topics which were already closed and where there are ongoing projects, you can see who were funded already, and you will see that there's quite a big turnover of experienced coordinators and participants. There's always room for newcomers, but the experience and the knowledge prevails, obviously, during the evaluations.
The next question is about AI. How to disclose that AI has been used and which AI tools were utilized in the proposal preparation? Is a standard sentence enough? Alison.
Thank you. Yes, so if you decide to use AI tools to help you to draft the proposal, you do need to declare that and to disclose it. You also need to be very careful in the way that you use them and to make sure and to be aware that you are taking full responsibility for the full content of the proposal, even the parts where you may have used AI to prepare. Where do you need to indicate this? In part B of the proposal template, and in particular there's a section for references, and there you should reference the AI tool that you've used and indicate how you've used it and for what part of the proposal. So if, just to take one example, you used a generative AI tool to help you ensure that the grammar and language was correct in your proposal, you would write the name of the tool and that you'd used it that way. But obviously there are many other ways you might choose to carefully and cautiously use AI to prepare the proposal.
Next question is about when the project is already running. Are we encouraged to travel to meet partners, for example, consortium meetings, or cut down on travel costs to only essential purposes? Agnes?
Yes, let's try to answer. It's very difficult to answer this with a yes or no, because everything depends on the project and the aims of the project, the partnership, whether the project must involve discussions with different stakeholders, which needs on-site discussions, and the methodology can be different project by project. Obviously, after COVID, there are more and more meetings happening online. So this we have seen in the projects, also internally in the Commission, what can be solved quickly by online meetings. Probably everybody would prefer online meetings instead of travels. This can be also more flexible in terms of organization. I would say keep the common sense also in terms of cost management, efficiency, how to spend your time and money.
Is there a minimum or maximum estimated duration of the project? Cecile?
So there is no minimum or maximum time foreseen. Typically our projects would be 3, 4, sometimes 5 years. But it's really up to you and to what you want to do in this project. So you have to, when you design the project, think of what you want to achieve and in what time frame this is achievable. So don't make it too short, don't make it too long.
How likely is it to be successful with an application for Horizon? Are there any percentages regarding this? Alison, or?
I think. Thank you, putting me on the spot. I can't give you now off the cuff the percentages, but we publish for every call the results so that you can see the success rates. So I don't know if the colleagues know the part of the portal where this is published. So you can look at past calls for cluster 2 in particular, and then see what the success rate was in previous calls.
Indeed, if you go to the portal, to one of the topic pages of a previous cluster 2 call, you will see under the call updates that we have published the number of proposals received per topic and the number of financed projects finally. So there you will see that there's a big variety per topics and the success rates are all across the cluster 2. Also per destination, there's a big difference. Usually heritage is the most subscribed call, and we have quite many proposals also in democracy, depending on the topic, whether also it's a research or innovation action or a coordination action, we get different number of proposals. So I would not like to say in general in Horizon, I could say 15% is a good guess overall, but it can be more or less.
As you know, we will have 2 calls in 2-step calls. And next question is about that. Could you please illustrate the timeline of the evaluation process of the 2-step proposals? Cecile.
So for the 2-stage proposals, 2-stage topics, so we have 2 topics that are 2-stage. We have the same deadline for the first stage. So same deadline as for the other calls, which is the 16th of September 2025. We will run the evaluation of the first stage throughout the autumn, so autumn 2025. And applicants should receive the results of this first stage evaluation by the end of the year, so before Christmas. They will then, so those that are selected to then be evaluated for the second stage will receive a communication from us, inviting them to submit the long version of the proposal. The deadline for the second stage will be the 17th of March 2026, and we would then run the evaluation over the next, the following 2 months roughly. So you would probably receive an answer before the summer or at the very beginning of the summer.
Next question is about, can an organization join 2 different consortia through different units?
Yes, they can. There's no problem with that. They have to make sure that they have the capacity to take part in more projects and there's no duplication of tasks, meaning that they are not doing exactly the same tasks in 2 different projects, because that would mean it's a double funding of the activities. So please make sure that it's clearly described.
Can we add letters of support to our proposal, for example, from stakeholders like public authorities, governmental agencies, etc.?
So it's not necessary and not recommended either to upload such letters of support. They're not needed for the evaluation, and there is no space for them in the application form for you to upload them. The only solution for you to upload them would be under Part B, but we don't recommend this, first of all, as I said, because they're not needed, and secondly, because this would take away pages for you to describe the work that you want to do. So Part B, as you know, is to describe the project, and there is a very strict page limit of 33 pages for CSAs, a lump sum format, and 50 pages for RIAs and IAs. And any pages, any additional pages would be disregarded. So they would be deleted from the tool and not made available to the experts evaluating your proposals. So really do make the most of this page limit and don't add any unnecessary documents.
Thanks. Next one is about lump sums, quite technical one. Based on previous experience, we have had negative evaluation of splitting management in work package in 2 parts due to lump sum. Do your evaluators know your recommendation to split full project work packages?
Thank you for the question, and I'm sorry to hear that you had a negative experience with the evaluation. The short answer is that yes, the evaluators are fully briefed by the staff in the Research Executive Agency or the other relevant agencies that are administering the Horizon Europe calls. They're all aware of the same rules. And from the very brief description in the question there, it does sound like the guidance was followed. In general, we would say that work packages should be very similar to an actual cost grant proposal. They need to make sense with the research and innovation and the activities that are being proposed. But in the case of work packages that would otherwise go across and the whole duration of the grant, you may choose to split them, for example, across the different reporting periods to manage your cash flow. So to take the example of a management work package which might cover the whole duration of the grant, there you may encounter cash flow problems if you would only be paid at the end once that work package has been completed, and therefore we do advise that it is possible to split such work packages. So again, I'm sorry if this appears to have been an issue. If you have any specific questions, then please send them to the Research Inquiry Service. But that is indeed our general guidance.
Next one is for Cremena. Are US or Africa-based organizations allowed to participate in any way?
Yes, they are allowed to participate, and in some cases for Africa are even encouraged to participate. But for the US, the participants are usually admitted to the consortium without funding. This means that they should bring their own funding to participate in the given project, and African entities are fully eligible for funding on an equal basis as applicants coming from the member states.
Next one is on gender. How can I manage gender balance in my research team if indeed my dedicated researchers to a specific goal all mainly are women? This is for Hannah.
Thank you very much for this question. This is it, that gender balance in among leadership positions since Work Program 25 is a ranking criterion, and we have kind of changed it from gender balance among research team to improve the situation, especially for smaller research organizations who tend to hire their teams after they got the financing. And when it comes to assessment of the ranking criterion, it has been not used very often in the past. It was only 3% of research projects that has been submitted under Horizon Europe. And it is not that you necessarily must have 50-50%. It is always better, so it is not mandatory. And it is always that you will compete in case there will be 2 proposals with the same score. Then it will be assessed whether you have better gender balance. So it is not about to have 100% 50-50, but it is about to be better than your competition. If in your research area there are only men or more men and or more women, then probably the similar situation will be faced by your competing projects. But I mean, you can of course give it a try to find out researchers that have expertise in that is required for your research, and give it a try to hire them so that your team is much more diverse.
Thanks, Hannah. If an application is successful, when do the projects start and how quickly will the applicants receive feedback on whether the application was successful? Cecile.
So it depends on which call you're referring to if you're referring to the single stage or the two-stage or to the partnership. So let me take them one by one. If you're referring to the single stage, we would be running the evaluation, so with the deadline on 16th of September, the evaluation running through the end of the year and probably into the beginning of 2026. You would get a reply around February, I would think. Then the grant agreement preparation would start, which takes about 3 months. And it's during the grant agreement preparation that you decide on the starting date. So I would say you could probably start during the summer 26 or early autumn. If you are applying for the two-stage call, so as I said earlier for a previous question, you would receive a reply from us on the outcome of your application around the month of, let's say, June, beginning of the summer. Then the grant agreement preparation would start and run throughout the summer, and you could probably start your project towards the end of the year, autumn or end of the year. And for the partnership, from the top of my head, I think you would receive a reply, so the results of your application by the end of 2025. Again, grant agreement preparation, and the start date then would be in 2026.
Okay. Are management and ethics work packages expected in work plans? Agnes?
Yes, management work package is usually expected. Whether you take ethics separately or not, I think it's a matter of choice. Maybe Catherine would like to comment on it. Many times ethics is part of the management work package and is coordinated by the coordinator itself. And there are also project types where ethics is actually one of the main aspects of the project. So in that case, it can be a separate work package as well. Catherine, do you want to?
Yes, I would like to take this opportunity to stress the importance to fill correctly the ethics self-assessment that you can find in section 4 of the description of action part A. You can do this with the support of guidance called How to Complete Your Ethics Self-Assessment that will give you all the information you need to identify which are the ethics aspects of the research that you want to implement. On the basis of this and on the basis of the ethics implications that you have identified, you can decide to add a deliverable related to ethics in your project management work package, or to make a dedicated work package to ethics. But it would depend on the outcomes of this self-analysis that is very important and often overlooked during the preparation of proposals.
Okay, then we have a question again to the international people. Cremena, can we include a UN agency within the consortium?
Yes, but they are under different rules, and more details will be posted on questions and answers website, where you will be posting after this session.
More info to follow in the FAQs. In some calls, the same organizations keep winning proposals. What advice do you have for newcomers? Who's the victim here? Alison?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to reply.
Agnes?
I would start by saying read the topic description very, very carefully and make sure that you really have understood every element. But then Agnes probably has more practical suggestions.
I think it's best to go to the national contact points. Usually there are national information days where they go through the details of the application process, where maybe they can tell you who were the successful national applicants. Maybe you can join a bigger consortium where you can still contribute with your experience and knowledge, but not take a huge work package. So you can start by small. For sure, the national contact points know the process, how to start the application process. We also have different databases where you can start your partner search also via the portal. And we have a brokerage event coming up tomorrow where you can sign in online, look for partners, you can get to know different set of people with whom you usually interact. And yes, of course, you can also try and join ongoing projects, public information days, whenever they have a, let's say, a conference where you can get to know the latest novelties. So I think, yes, please try one by one, small by small. There are also cascade funding opportunities, which are kind of which are available even to smaller players. They are also posted on the portal.
Another smaller player question next. Can we participate as an individual entity, or do you need to be a part of a consortium?
We have a minimum partnership requirement. So yes, in most calls we need a consortium. The consortium can consist of entities, including a person as well, an individual, but just starting a consortium as 3 individuals, it will be difficult to win a proposal. So I would not recommend it. In the coordination and support actions, only 1 participant is enough. So in that case, yes, an individual could apply. But if you look at the scope of these topics are huge. So they require a big variety of experience and manpower. So always look at the topic and whether you can fill in all the tasks with the experience.
Next question is about Mexico in particular. Is Mexico, I suppose, eligible in joining this round of Cluster 2 applications?
Maybe.
Mexico is eligible, but again, it's about the funding. It's eligible to participate, but it's not eligible for funding, except in certain cases. But I see that in this round of work program, there is no specific exception for Mexico. So I would advise you to look into the so-called joint funding procedures, where the specific agencies in Mexico, like CONACYT, is organizing funding for participants in Horizon Europe on behalf of, not on behalf, but from Mexico. Again, if interested, we will be putting these respective links on the Q&A sessions after this session.
Okay. When assessed, is gender balance at partner level or at consortium level during evaluations? Hannah, do you want to take this?
Yes, it is considered at the consortium level, at the whole project.
Agnes, you mentioned already where to look for already funded projects. Could you give a better reference of a database name where people can go to?
Yes. So there are different ways to look for funded projects. One is on the funding and tenders portal. Either you go to a certain topics page and you scroll down and you will see the funded projects for a given topic. Or if you look for a full database, then it's under the either on Cordis or also on the Funding and Tenders portal. We have a separate section dedicated to projects and results, filter for either Horizon or Cluster 2 or just by the keyword, and then you can look for different databases.
A follow-up question about individual participation possibilities. Can a precariously employed researcher, research fellow or adjunct professor at a university in an EU member state be eligible to join a consortium? Cécile.
So the answer is yes. Anybody can join a proposal, a project, in whatever capacity. So you don't have to have tenure. You can be a research fellow. You can be rather junior. That's fine, as long as you bring something to the project.
Okay, how can we... If payment is received after the end of work back, now the questions are jumping. How can we decide already? If payment is received after the end, no. Okay, slow down. How can we hire postdocs or PhDs and pay them or guarantee their pay with the lump sum payment logic? You, Alison?
Yes, I'm trying to understand the question. I don't think there's any big difference with lump sum grants here and actual cost grants. Basically, with a lump sum proposal, you prepare the detailed budget in advance. You go through and you say what your personnel needs would be and the estimated costs, as well as any other estimated costs. There's a detailed budget table that needs to be submitted as part of the proposal. But you can wait until your proposal has been successfully evaluated and your grant agreement is being signed before you actually employ people if, for example, you need to employ PhD students. I don't know if you would like to add something to that.
No, I think that's
good. Do the calls allow allocating funds for a project manager in a project budget?
It will be necessary. It will be necessary, and yes, under project management, you need to count for the personnel costs, for example, of a project manager as well.
Next question is to Alison. Can we expect a general shift into the direction of having more and more lump sum calls?
Well, as the questioner here has noticed, all calls, or practically all of the calls under Cluster 2 are now using lump sum for these particular calls, so they fully embrace the lump sum approach. We have been gradually rolling out lump sums during Horizon Europe, and the last few years have been increasing substantially. And last year we did a very in-depth analysis of proposals, so of applicants, of successful and unsuccessful beneficiaries, and of the expert evaluators who'd been involved to check their satisfaction levels, whether there were any problems with the system. And we discovered that overall a great majority are very happy and satisfied with the use of lump sums. Particularly newcomers and SMEs and smaller entities find that it really helps reduce the administrative burden of the grant management. And there is basically no financial reporting once you get your grant. So there's a big advantage there. So this is why, yes, we are gradually rolling out the use of lump sum further. If you look in the other clusters, the calls that are being published today, you'll see that the degree to which this is being done varies across the clusters because it's not one size fits all. We see that it's definitely advantageous for grants up to and including around 10 million. And then where you have a consortium of up to 10 or even maybe 20 participants. If you have a very big, very complex grant, possibly the advantages are then less extreme. And so we are hoping by the end of Horizon Europe, so in 2 years' time, to have reached around 50% lump sum use across the whole programme. But obviously each work programme part will examine very carefully which topics this is appropriate for, so the degree will be different across the programme.
The follow-up question on lump sums: where to find guidance on lump sum grants, budget making and staff monthly rates definition?
Well, if you go onto the Funding and Tenders portal, the section on guidance, we have a whole dedicated page now on lump sum, where we bring together the written guidance, the templates. We have live events similar to this today where you can pose questions, but we also have recordings of past ones. There was one just in March where I believe the link was shared for this event too, and we will be having a follow-up event at the first half of June. So if you go on there, you can take part in the events, but there's also very detailed guidance there about how to prepare the detailed budget table, what you need to take into account. And so we hope that there you'll be able to find everything you need.
Next is about Hungarian participation. Many Hungarian universities are barred from receiving funding. Will it be viewed as negative to include them anyways?
I can answer that question. We just had a national contact point of Hungary yesterday mentioning this. Actually, it won't be negatively viewed. So basically, the entity's experience and contribution to the project in terms of experience will be viewed upon, just like for any other entity it's done. They can participate on different financial terms depending on the type of entity actually they are. They may also join as an associated partner with their own work tasks to be performed, and they can also receive from Hungary funds to participate in a project if they cannot receive from the EU.
Thanks, Agnes. Is South Korea allowed to join a consortium and can it receive funding? Kremena.
Yes, of course. South Korea is associated country, and as such, it's fully eligible for funding and participating in consortium. Just, of course, the general rule for minimum number of beneficiaries should be respected in a consortium, which you already discussed. So yes.
Associated country be comparable to member state. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Will there be another call of Horizon for project durations of 3 years? Will it be the same opening date and deadline date of the call like this year? Cécile?
Yes. So the work program for 2026 and 2027 is being designed as we speak. It's being drafted. So we will have calls in 26 and in 27, which will probably be similar to what we have in 2025. However, as I mentioned, it's still in the process of being drafted, so we don't have any further details at this stage. Do bear in mind, though, that the topics change every year. So that you might not see the same topics come back next year or in 27.
Next one is about project reporting. What and how frequent are the reporting requirements? How often is the funding for next year stopped based on reports from previous years? Agnes?
Yes, I can take this, at least the first question. What are the reporting requirements? So in general, the templates for reporting are public, are generic for everyone. We have a continuous reporting function where the project can enter details while the project is running, and then at reporting times, we ask the consortium to provide us with a detailed feedback on the progress of the project. Usually the projects are divided into 2 or 3 reporting periods depending on the length of the project, and maybe you refer to that in your question, like how frequent. So yes, in a project of 3 or 4 years we would have 2 or 3 reporting periods depending on the length. How often is the funding stopped? It's difficult to say. We don't usually stop the funding, but we take a look at the achievements of the whole consortium. And I would say it's very rare that the whole consortium doesn't do anything, because most of the projects do want to achieve high results. And if there's a partner who could not achieve everything, then usually the partners take away the tasks which have to be executed in the project. So it's everybody's interest to execute the project. Therefore, we don't see it often at all.
Is there any indicative amount of resources to be budgeted for clustering with other projects in the proposal, I suppose?
Resources to be budgeted.
When we do clustering ourselves, when we see that some projects are similar, but in the application phase?
We usually, in the topic text, we ask the projects to do some clustering with other projects which are financed by the same topic, but there's no indicative amount. But it's good if the projects keep in mind that flexibility is needed. In most of our projects, they have to interact with different stakeholders, whether these are similar projects or really stakeholders who contribute to the results, outcomes. So yes, flexibility is needed without indication of a budget.
And I would maybe add that clustering does not have to be expensive. So you can do online meetings, you can do phone calls, there are ways of keeping in touch without having a big conference or a big get-together.
A further question about gender balance to Hanna. What exactly does gender balance mean? Is it related to the researchers' gender in the consortium or the real outcomes of a given project?
Thank you very much for this question. Yes, it is indeed about the gender of the researchers, but I would like to again stress that from now on we are looking at the gender of researchers in leading positions. So this is very important change. And all applicants, there is a field in application forms where all projects has to fill in the gender of persons or researchers that will be involved, including leading researchers. And this is exactly based on these data. We are then counting the gender balance for the ex aequo criterion.
Because we've seen that gender balance pops up in different ways. So the assessment doesn't mean that it's evaluated in the same manner as it's evaluated under excellence or implementation. So gender balance per se is not part of the evaluation. So unless a proposal is competing with another proposal at the same score, we do not look at the gender balance of the consortium. It's not the same evaluation criteria.
Next question is about, can the European Commission agencies and other EU institutions or bodies participate as beneficiaries or associated partners in a proposal? The JRC, for example.
Only the JRC with its own budget?
Yeah, exactly. Is there a recommended consortium size in terms of the number of partners and countries for a RIA project? Cecile?
So for RIA projects, the minimum would be 3. So 3 beneficiaries, shall we say, from 3 different countries. But there's no maximum. So we have sometimes consortia of 10, sometimes 15 partners, occasionally more. just make sure when you design your project, your proposal, make sure that it remains manageable. So of course, you know that the more partners you have, the more complex it will be to coordinate all of this and all of these people. So keep it reasonable. Make sure that all of these partners have something to bring to the project. And of course, explain all of this in your proposal. And just think that as the coordinator, you will have to coordinate all these people.
How important is it to include partners from previous projects that develop the frameworks mentioned for CSAs? Agnes?
I think if the topic description mentions that a topic is a follow-up of a previous one, it's imperative that experience will be needed from that project. So it's not a must, because if the work program doesn't say that you must include partners from a given project, then it's really a choice of the consortium. But you must prove that you have sufficient knowledge and experience to continue to build upon the existing knowledge.
What is the added value of, I suppose, different types of entities for the consortium?
It depends on the topic and what you want to do with your project. As I mentioned earlier, just make sure that everybody, so each entity has something to bring to the project. So you might want to involve researchers, you might want to involve civil society, you might want to involve NGOs. This really depends on what kind of work you want to do. And as I said, make sure that they all have something to bring to the project. This will be something that will be evaluated under the implementation criterion by the experts, so by the evaluators. So make sure that it's convincing and that it makes sense.
Does the payment at the end of a work package mean no pre-financing?
No, it doesn't. You still have pre-financing in a lump sum grant, just as you would do for an actual cost grant. The difference is when you get to the end of your reporting period, you're reporting on the activities done and whether the work packages have been completed or not, and not on the amounts of money you have spent to do the work. And so then if the work package has been completed, it will then be paid. And then at the end of the project, there's a complicated calculation to work out what is then still due to you at the end. But the short answer is you still get pre-financing just as with an actual cost grant.
Could you explain about the selection process steps, Cecile?
So when you prepare your proposal, when you'll see it, we'll see this in the templates. There are 3 sections for a proposal. So there is the excellence section, then the impact. So what impact do you foresee for your project? So if it is funded, and for your research, and finally implementation, which looks at the operational capacity of the consortium, at what the members are, what partners are involved, what they bring to the project, and so on. So this is for the application form. This is then mirrored in the evaluation form. So the evaluation form that the experts, the evaluators, will be using also has these 3 sections of excellence, impact, and implementation. And based on what you have written in your application, so in the part B of your proposal, and also for the part A to look at the different partners and what they have to bring, the experts and the evaluators will then assess each section accordingly. So based on the data and information that you have provided, each section is scored out of a score of 5, so maximum 5, which means that the overall score, maximum overall score that you can receive for your proposal is 15. The, let's say, passing grade, so what we call the threshold, is 10. So 10 out of 15 you are considered as, let's say, fundable. So you will be included in a rank list. Anything that is below 10 is automatically rejected. And then, of course, we fund the best, depending on the available budget. So you will see also, if you have a look in the topic descriptions in the work program, you will see how many projects are foreseen to be funded per topic. So it depends a lot on each topic. Once proposals have been selected, so based on these scientific evaluation criteria, there is also an ethics evaluation that takes place for proposals that are selected for funding. So this is done as a second step in the evaluation. And for this step, we have ethics experts who look at your proposals, who tease out any potential ethics issues that may be involved in the research or in the work that you propose to carry out. And they will, if necessary, suggest ethics deliverables for you to provide during the lifetime of your project. There may be a recommendation to include an ethics advisor or to have an ethics check during the lifetime of the project. So I think these are the two main steps in a nutshell.
Thanks. Further questions about the lump sums. The calculation method with lump sums is new to me and so far rather unclear. Are there any resources to train? What and where are the resources to train on this? And will there be some training on the info event?
Yes, so I think this is very similar to the earlier question. If you go on the Funding and Tenders portal guidance section, there's a whole page on lump sums, and that includes guidance, but also recordings of events, training events we've already done on lump sums, and there's one coming up the middle of June as well. Also, there is an example of the detailed budget table, which you can download there. And there you can see on the cover page, there's quite a lot of guidance on how to fill it in. And so if you start to maybe play around with it as a dummy trial exercise, I think it will become a lot clearer there. And then obviously, if you have specific questions via your national contact points who are more and more familiar with lump sum proposals now, and also the research inquiry service if necessary. But I would just say about the lump sum budget table, when you get to actually making your proposal, please make sure that you use the template and the budget table that is in the submission system for the actual topic that you're making the proposal for.
Can that take into account inflation? The next question.
Yes, so I think the way that you design your lump sum budget is actually very similar to how you would do it for an actual cost grant, in the sense that you need to sit down and think how much your project is going to cost, whether those are material costs or equipment costs or personnel costs, and then think ahead for the duration of the grant. And if you think that high inflation is going to continue, put that into your planning. So there I don't think there's any big difference. What's important for the lump sum budget table is that you justify the estimates that you've put in. We're very aware that they're estimates, you can't predict the future, but they need to be plausible and justified.
Next question is about, is there an oral presentation phase in evaluating the proposals?
No, or should I say not yet?
Exactly. In this work program. Can non-EU countries participate as a case study?
The question is very generic. So as a case study, you always have to link it to a given topic. So what is the aim of a topic, whether non-EU countries experience, feedback is relevant to fulfill the aims of the topic, to contribute to the expected outcomes. Per se, yes, it's possible that they can contribute, but you really have to make sure that it has a good fit to the topic.
And the next question is more or less the same. What are the requirements for third countries to be eligible? Do you want to add on something?
Yes, maybe the colleague will as well, but just to say that we have the low and middle income countries who can be automatically eligible for funding. Again, being eligible or eligible for funding is quite a big difference. So basically everybody can participate, but not everybody can get EU funding. The low and middle income countries get automatically funding or may get automatically funding besides the member states and associated countries. There are also other actors who may get funding depending on their exceptional status, which will be decided during the evaluation by experts, whether they have exceptional knowledge or other infrastructure with which they contribute to the project.
Cremena, do you want to add something to what Agnes said, or?
No, she was very thorough.
How do travel costs work for fully remote organizations that have teams in various countries, including in non-EU countries?
Well, travel costs work in the same way with us as they would work within your institution. So we build upon your accounting mechanism. And if the team is working in different parts of Europe, we may accept these costs if you foresee these costs, if they are necessary for the project, if this is how the entity works and if it has a good reason and if this is how the project is built up. Everything can be planned if it's well justified and if it contributes in an effective, efficient way, then it can be done.
Can organizations from Australia participate as partners in consortium in destination innovative research on social and economic transformations?
As far as I know, yeah, go ahead.
Cremena.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there are specific restrictions in this call or destination, but if there is no specific restrictions, they can participate. Again, with their own funding.
Okay, Agnes is checking and we'll come back to that if we find something additional. Next question is about open access. Is it necessary and or advisable for the 5 publications per partner in Part A to be open access? And if so, what open access requirements should they meet? Who wants to take this?
Well, the publications contribute to the experience of the entity. They have to show that they are able to implement the project and they have the necessary experience and personnel. So this is what the experts will look at. If the experts cannot read at all, not even a small abstract about the publication, it won't be too convincing, I would say. But it's up to you what you include in this section of the publications. There's no requirement to make it open access, so make your best choice, I would say.
Another gender question to Hanna. At proposal stage, we have a section on gender dimension in research. Do we have to explain our gender balance objectives within this section?
No, this section really has to concern the content of the research proposal and how the gender dimension is considered in the design, in research questions, in all other parts of your research project, including maybe even a communication. So no, this is not the place where you inform about the content of your team. There is other part in the applications form where you add the information about the gender of researchers, and this is the place where you add information about gender balance in teams. So there are 2 other places in the applications.
If I may perhaps compliment, there's sometimes some confusion between the gender dimension that we want to see in your research, and this should be discussed in your Part B, so where you present your proposal. So this is the gender dimension in research. And we had an earlier question on the gender balance. Now that is something different. Gender balance is taken into account when we have a situation where 2 proposals receive exactly the same overall score, and we have to tell them apart. Which one comes first in the ranking list, which ones come second. in that case, we look at the consortium members, so the researchers or people, team members involved in your project. And this information is based on the information that the applicant provides during the application in Part A. So in Part A, when you fill in Part A, you will have to put in all your partners, and for each partner, you will have to indicate how many people are involved, will be working on this project for this partner. And here you indicate whether they are just, I think that the choice is between team member or leading, I can't remember the exact term, leading expert or leading researcher. So it's up to each consortium to define in the Part A who is a leading researcher or a team member. And this is what we will base the ranking on if you are in a situation where your proposal is ex aequo with another proposal. So just to recap, two things. There's a gender dimension in your proposed research, which is part of the scientific evaluation. And then there's the gender balance in your team, so the actual people who will be working on the research. And this is only taken into account for the ex aequo proposals.
Next question is about, can advisory board members receive honorarium, and if so, what determines the range and limit of such payments? Agnes?
Yes, it's possible that they get honorarium, basically personnel costs or subcontracting costs, they are all available. Also in the lump sum projects, they have to be foreseen, and again, what defines the costs is similar to the actual costs. Nothing is different in the lump sum payment. So what would you pay normally in another project to an advisory board member? You will probably have to describe the tasks of the person who would be an advisory group member, whether it would mean just a meeting every once in a while or additional tasks. It really depends on how the project would use the advisory board members.
Next question is asking about what's the difference between third party providing in-kind contribution against payment and a subcontractor?
Well, we don't have a financial person here on board, so I would say the subcontractor is someone who provides a service that's essential to the project. As a service provider, it may have a margin of it's not a direct cost of doing the service, but it may have some profit on it, and the subcontractor has to be selected in a competitive manner. So there are different ways of selecting the subcontractor or the third party who will contribute to the project. The best way to look at the exact definition, because there are quite a few differences, is to go to the annotated grant agreement. It's under the guidance section of the Funding and Tenders portal, and there you can look at the subtle differences. But I think the profit making is one of the big differences.
The next question is going more details in that once the project has been won, how should the expenditure or budget be justified? Can subcontracting take place, and in what amount? Alison.
Well, since all of the projects are going to be lump sum projects for these cluster 2 calls now, the important thing is that you justify the expected budget up front. This is why we ask you to complete the detailed budget table, which the evaluators will look at very carefully during the proposal evaluation. And there may be then some questions during the grant agreement preparation phase to make sure that budget estimate upfront is watertight and plausible. But then once your grant agreement has been signed and you start your project, you need to report on and demonstrate that the activities have been done, and there is no reporting on the financial expenses and the costs incurred. That's the big difference. And so you you don't need to, I don't have the exact wording of the question up there anymore, but you don't need to report on the costs anymore. It's about whether you've actually undertaken the activities and completed the work packages as you said you would. On the subcontracting, there is a maximum limit, which colleagues may be able to remind me of. But that will be in the guidance, and you need to include any subcontracting that you're planning to do in the detailed budget table as part of your proposal. There's a section for that. But the important principle is that once the detailed budget has been agreed and your lump sum grant has been signed and approved, it's up to you to then complete the task. We're not then looking at what your actual costs have been.
Can the same researcher be part of two different organizations for different proposals on different calls or in the same call?
Yes, there's no restriction about it. So the researcher can be part of different organizations. They can be paid by different organizations. They have to make sure that the accounting is also showing the related association of the person to the other organization. I mean, the person has to be on the payroll of the entity or get the subcontracting or different contracts. Everything is possible.
The only thing perhaps is if you are lucky enough to be selected for both proposals, so both proposals end up being funded, you have to make sure that first of all you have the time to do both. And of course you cannot be paid twice, so you would have to split your time between the two projects, and of course the payment should reflect this as well.
Indeed, we have a timesheet requirement. So most organizations have their own timesheet manner to make sure that they can record who participates in which project at a certain moment or day. So that needs to be kept.
Next question is about the estimated length of a project proposal. Is there one?
I am not sure here if you're referring to the length of the actual proposal, so the page limit, or to the duration. So let me answer both then. For the length, so page limit of a proposal, it depends on the type of action of the topic that you're interested in. If you're looking at an RIA or an IA, it's 50 pages for the part B. And if you're looking at applying for the CSA topics, then that would be 33 pages. Now, if you meant the duration of the project, so as I mentioned earlier, typically our projects would be 3 to sometimes 4 and occasionally 5 years. But do bear in mind that, first of all, you need to be realistic in what you want to achieve. So the time that you foresee for the duration of the project has to be in line with the work that you will be carrying out. And secondly, also bear in mind that there is a recommendation on the amount of funding that you can receive for one project. So if you receive, it depends on the topic, but you need to also bear in mind that this has to last for the duration of the project. So if you, let's say, drag out your project over too long, you might run out of funds. So it has to be feasible. What you want to do has to be in line with the duration that you foresee for the project.
Next question goes more deeply into RIA project is what's the maximum allowed duration of RIA projects? For example, Democracy 9, that does not have any special rules.
Usually our projects last between 3 and 4 years. Usually that's sufficient to have the expected outcomes which are part of the topic description. So I think that's the most important. How long do you need to make sure that you can satisfy the requirements of the topic? There are policy areas where it's very good if you can react promptly. So it wouldn't be positive if the policy would have to wait 5 years until there's a real outcome. So you have to plan it according to the needs of the topic.
Next question is about, is there any added value when considering the extension of consortium geographical zone in the sense of border countries, regional, etc.? So cross-regional, cross-border.
We have some topics where some areas of Europe are encouraged to participate. So I'm not sure whether it's about a specific topic or in general. First of all, I would look at the exact topic description, whether the topic requires the participation of more and more regions or specific regions. If there's nothing specific, then look at the aims, the expected outcomes of the topic, how many consortium members from given areas can satisfy that, and adjust it according to that. You have to make sure that everybody has a role within the project. So it's not just adding a certain region just to be added to the project, but everybody needs to have a valid role within and contribute to the project. Maybe somebody doesn't need to be a beneficiary, but can be a stakeholder to be consulted during the project, or where dissemination activities can happen. So there are different ways to participate.
Next one is again about lump sums. How flexible are the funds between work packages and cost categories under the lump sum method?
Relatively flexible. Once the lump sum grant has been signed, we are more interested in seeing that you have completed the work packages, that you've done the activities you say you're going to do, rather than that you have consumed a certain amount of budget. Obviously, if you want to make changes which drastically change how much one beneficiary or another would get from the lump sum share, you may prefer to make a grant amendment just to have security on your side and within the consortium. And yes, I wanted to pick up on the next question straight away, if I may, because I was going to qualify something that we said earlier.
The timesheet requirement.
Yes,
Yeah.
for actual cost grants, it's true that we have timesheets, but this is one of the big simplifications for lump sum funded projects, and thank you for the question. So your organisation may still choose to have timesheets, and of course we don't expect or allow someone to be working 48 hours every day, but it is not a requirement to produce timesheets for us. You do not need to report in that way for us for lump sum topics, and that does mean that if your organisation doesn't require it anymore, that you have a big simplification from the paperwork on your side.
We have a couple of minutes left. The next one is very specific. The topic Transfo 04 cannot currently be found in the Funding and Tenders portal. Is there a reason for this?
All topics have been published today. So if you cannot see it, then I suggest that you adjust one of the filters under the submission system. I mean, on the left-hand side, you can adjust whether you are looking at open calls, forthcoming calls, or closed calls. Probably you are just looking at forthcoming calls and not the open ones. The two-stage calls have already been opened today.
Next one is about what's the minimum timeline to review and approve a new organization and assign a PIC number, specifically if a small civil society organization. Agnes.
It depends whether a PIC number, whether you mean to create a PIC number as a draft PIC. So to participate in a proposal, you just need a PIC number, register according to your best knowledge the legal data of the entity, and with that PIC number you can already submit a proposal. Now, if you have to proceed with the validation as you are part of a successful proposal, then the validation timeline depends on the legal data you are able to provide to the validation services typically, I would say it doesn't take long, so it can be done within a month or two, but you have to have the legal documents at place.
Thank you. And I think we are running out of time here, so I would like to thank everybody online for submitting those questions so actively. As I said in the beginning, what we didn't manage to answer here or what we need to clarify, we will do that in the FAQs, and you can always submit additional questions to your NCPs, your national contact points, or the European Research Inquiry Service. So thanks to everybody online. Thank you for the colleagues here in the studio and there online answering to your questions. Thanks also to the colleagues that participated in the previous sessions from DG Research and Innovation, DG Employment, DG Education and Culture, and REA colleagues. The publication of the work program was today, so we want to wish you all the best in preparing your proposals, and we are eagerly waiting for them after the deadline of 16th of September. Thank you all once again.